a fantastic Saturday. If you're watching this, chances are at any rate. So recently, I have put out a video that was basically super, what is it? Super stock, super sport, super whatever. All right, so I might have blown the intro a little bit on that video. The fact still remains that it's no less annoying, especially for those of us who fly this flag right here of the 392, and especially those of us that have spent the resentment for that marketing, if you will, that had come out on the new super stock. So, my Corleone, what's up, brother? Got the arm flex, I like it. So, Abdul, what's up, man? Good evening, buddy. So the issue that I'm running into with this is, you know, there were some guys that were saying, oh, well, wait a minute now, the super stock is going to be a 2021 and the 1320 is going to be it is a 19 and a 20 model. My argument to that is this: if the marketing is out now, what's the deal there? And besides, is there just some extra parts just laying around for that demon? Let me ask you something. For those of us with Hellcats or Challengers just in general, doesn't matter what's powering the thing, maybe like to get my hand on that hood. How about an upgraded drive shaft? Rear end and half shaft sound like a pretty good thing. The only problem is that none of those products will waterfall down the way that everything else has waterfalled down. Just one more way that Mopar tries to stick it to you just a little bit. So, at any rate, in looking at the issues that I've had and do still have with Dodge, that's got to be the biggest one. Is that the styling cues keep waterfalling, but none of the performance aspects do. Weird, really, when you think about it. And to give you an example, if you wanted to get a hood, talking about Demon Hood in this case, if you wanted to get a rear seat delete right before the latest shutdown package was released, if you wanted to get a drive shaft, and this is current, you realize you can't do that unless you have the VIN and in some cases the registration to either a Red Eye or a Demon. Strange that you can't buy those parts. Now, again, y'all have heard me say this before. I can go into any Chevrolet parts place or a Ford parts place and buy any part on any car that they make. But freaking Dodge doesn't let you do that. FCA or whatever governing body you want to holler at this point. And that's the part that gets me so frustrated. And it's not even the fact that the super stock exists and that the marketing is in completely poor taste. Even that can take a back seat to this. But the problem is that there is absolutely no waterfalling of those performance components to the Hellcat, the 392, or the 5.7. There's no support for anybody that's flying the flag, even remotely aggressively. So to that, I'm a little bit, I don't know, confused. Let me give you another example of this. And this is the other irony that walks behind this. I'm at the drag strip this past Friday, and I didn't take my car. I actually was there to work on some tune stuff for a buddy of mine's car. It's irrelevant. The fact of the matter is, as I'm sitting in his car, basically looking at a data log, I'm looking around me in the staging lanes, and it's nothing but Mopars. You get your occasional Mustang, old school stuff here and there. But it is almost like it's Mopar Fest on any random Friday night up there. They're selling these cars hand over fist. Guys are out enjoying them. And I can tell you that of all the cars that were there, most of them were naturally aspirated. There were about 8 Hellcat variants, whether it was a Red Eye, Hellcat, or whatever. A couple of Trackhawks. And the rest were all 392s and 5.7s. And it's kind of what you would figure, right? But the problem that I'm seeing here, and really the thing that irks me the most, is that these are the guys that are flying that Mopar flag the highest. And yet, they're not being supported. None of those parts are waterfalling down, and there's no support for the parts that could. Case in point, 392 intake, for either the trucks. Well, I guess the truck would work as the truck intake. But let's talk about the 392 intake on a 5.7. There's no patch, or there's just now, I should say, a patch in HP Tuners for the 392 intake to work. And you've got to kind of dig in there to get it to work. I know that Doc Diff is actually in the process of getting that sorted out. But the point of it is this. The 5.7 doesn't even have an active intake manifold, even though you could pretty much make that happen. There's no waterfall effect. There's no exhaust. There's no real anything unless you're going to be running from a scat package for the 5.7 guys. And there are a ton of 5.7s at the track. Lots of 392s. But yet still Dodge will only hang their hat on anything that wears a Hellcat badge. Which again is pretty funny to me, considering that the marketing on the Hellcat engine had that elephant footprint stamping out the Hellcat paw print. But you're still going to lean on the Hellcat, and you're going to use that Hellcat and milk that marketing cow for as long as you possibly can, won't you, Dodge? Pretty funny if you think about it. Like funny faux pas, not funny ha-ha. Every chance you get, you're stomping on the heritage and the mythology that you're creating. How stupid is this? I would love to be in that marketing meeting. I would love to be a part of FCA Dodge marketing. They have clearly no clue. They don't have anybody in that department that has any experience with motorsport whatsoever. It's clearly obvious. In fact, here's the funny thing. The people that they are marketing to, they have nobody in the organization in that department that is part of the group of people, the demographic that they're marketing to. That would be like me trying to put a marketing program together for tampons. I mean, the only thing I know how to use a tampon for is to fix a freaking bloody or broken nose. They work fantastic. Take your tampon, clip it, got the string hanging out, jam it up in there. It hurts like hell, but it'll soak up all the blood. They work great. So if I'm putting together, it's really not what they're meant for, but it's kind of the same thing, I guess, if you think about it. And that's how it is with their marketing department. I mean, they know how to drive a car. I mean, that's how they got to work that day, presumably. I know COVID, but you know what I'm talking about. They've seen cars. They've seen racing. They know what roar and tire smoke looks like. Let me take it a different direction. Marketing, still another complete and total screw up. Are any of you guys fans of Motor Trend On Demand? I've been, not to say that I'm that guy, but I've been on MTOD. I've been on that platform since the old platform when it was just Finnegan and Freiberg. I've been on that platform for forever. And when Dodge got on board as a key sponsor, one of the funny things that I noticed was this. Dodge, sponsor of a show that hinges around modifying and resurrecting and bringing cars back to life. A manufacturer that doesn't support these cars in the aftermarket. I can't buy and waterfall parts from a Demon or a Red Eye into my Hellcat, the exact platform that you keep falling back on to market. Weird relationship there, Dodge. I can't buy any of that stuff, but you're so very quick to be this sponsor of a show that has absolutely everything to do with the grassroots guys and modifying and hot rodding and working on stuff, and you don't support any of that for the people that are actually buying your product. It just, if you can't see the dumb fuckery, that I can explain it to you, but I can't understand it to you. I see these things for what they are. I'm calling them like I see them. And this is the most frustrated I think I've ever been with Dodge. And I was pissed with the elephant thing. But I am frustrated beyond comprehension with this stuff. Catalyst, thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. He's asking, is the trans brake that is offered in the 1320 and Demon really as big a deal that Mopar makes it out to be? If it is, why isn't it just the staple in every trim level? Couple of things here. One, the trans brake option, a lot of folks just flat out don't use. It shocks the system hard. And guys have been known to snap axles. They've been known to crack diffs with that. A lot of it has to do with, on the boosted applications, a lot of it has to do with torque reserve, basically. And what that is that it allows the car to go further into boost under partial throttle when you're staging it, like at launch. Kind of the same thing with launch control. Most of the guys, in fact, all of the guys in Legion of Demons are foot braking the cars. Everybody that's run a record that probably isn't named Leah Pritchett, because we don't know what she did, but almost everybody to a man is running right off a foot brake. It's a gimmick as far as I'm concerned, and in a car that weighs this much, probably wouldn't suggest using it. And a lot of those guys, like I say, they don't use it. I've run 970s, 980s in a modified Demon in the heat. In fact, it was 2 Julys ago. And I was running 970s, 980s in that car, foot braking it, and I didn't even want to touch the trans brake. I didn't want to come near that thing. So it just wasn't going to be a good idea. So, but good question. Thank you very much. Appreciate the contribution to the cause too. Let me check in with everybody real quick. Slime Cooties got the 2 thumbs up. What's up, man? Christian's in, say, hey, B, what do you think about that Wrangler 392 leak? Wrangler needs a 5.7. I'm like, whatever with a 392. There's a lot of guys that are doing swaps, 5.7 and 392s into the Wranglers. The V6 is okay. I'd be worried about cooling if you're going to be doing a lot of off-roading with the V8, but plenty of guys with the LS crew are doing that. There's guys that, listen, there's guys that Hellcat swap those things. There's guys that LS swap those things. We had one at the shop, still one of the spookiest ones, but it was a LS with a Maggie with meth injection in the... When it was brought to us, whoever tuned it to run on meth, which is the absolute worst idea that you can have running a boosted application. I honestly thought that thing was going to blow up when I was data logging it. Joseph's saying, preach. I love it. Thanks, Joseph. Rob Wall saying, hey, Max, what? Long time watcher. Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate that. I really do, brother. Saying, love what you're saying about the 392 and the 5.7. Finally, someone telling the truth and saying what other people don't want to hear. Hey, man, it is the truth, brother. And I'll tell you something else. To be perfectly honest with you, my frustration, if it's not coming out clearly, it's only because I have couched quite a bit of that frustration leading into this. Now, I believe in a little bit of tough love every once in a while, but this time, with the reveal, I have to say that I'm more frustrated now than I ever have been. And that's not really a position that I want to find myself in my brand of choice. And there's a couple of things we're going to get to, a couple of experiences at the drag strip this past Friday that's going to help to illustrate that. But yeah, suffice it to say, there's a lot of irony, but that's why I want to come back to my rant. I just want to catch up with you guys, but thank you very much. I appreciate it. Uncle Stinkford's checking in saying, what is more frustrating is that Mopar is supposed to be a parts company. Isn't that the truth? I will just stick with my stock 392 Charger with a mild rear suspension upgrades on sticky tires on the street. I'm fine. Hey, listen, here's something to consider on that, guys. Man, y'all know I've been saying this for a while. On the street, 392 is difficult to mess with from a dig. Say what you will about a roll, but if you're going to be roll racing, you got to be able to make sure you got paper up for bail, because if you're going to get cracked at about $1.20, $1.30, $1.40, yeah, believe me, they don't take kindly to that stuff. But if you're just playing around from a dig, you can get away with a hell of a lot. And a 392 is a force to be reckoned with up to about 100 miles an hour. So that's just the way it is. Chris is saying, by the way, don't know if y'all care, but Bronco will be revealed this Monday. Would have been a lot more cool if that thing were based on the F-150 platform. I just cannot wrap my interest around something that's based around a mini truck. Not like that. And if it was a mini truck, I want to see Nissan hard body. I want to see old school Toyota. I want to see old school Mazda. That's what I'm looking at. We're talking 80s and 90s style. Love those trucks. Would love to do a build on one of those too. Nathan's checking in saying, "Good evening, Mr. Mason. Do I need a computer remap or a fuel curve remap after a mid-muffler delete?" No, sir, you don't. Not at all. Don't worry about it one bit. Charles got me to it. It said, no, if you do headers. That is correct. If you do long tubes, you're going to have a reflash. And the reason for that, the computer knows there's a couple of things going on here. One is going to be they're noisier. That's going to affect your knock sensors. Believe me when I tell you, dealing with knock sensors that just decide to skits out every once in a while because they hear something that they don't like, trust me, it's frustrating enough as it is with the stock manifolds, which are muffled in and of themselves. But long tubes, yeah, for sure, you'll need them for that reason. And pulse timing. The computer knows how long it takes when the after a cylinder fires, it knows how long it takes for that exhaust pulse to go from the exhaust port to the oxygen sensor. That's how it basically comes up with misfires and things like that, which isn't all that accurate anyway, but that's also how it calculates misfires. Anyway, long story short, you don't get the timing fixed in the tune. It can kind of skit some things out with your car. So, let's see what we're saying. And B. Mason just made a tampon analogy. You knew it was coming. Mike Warren saying, B, I hope you're well and healthy. I am, and same to you and yours, my friend. Christian saying, I'm afraid Dodge is on the same marketing path as Harley Davidson. Appeal to a certain demographic until you're left in the dust by the competition. Hellcat cars are cool, but man, it's been too long. And yeah, you've been hearing me say that for a while. It's a lifestyle marketing campaign, not a manufacturing and product deal that they're putting together. And again, Catalyst, thank you very much, brother. I appreciate it. Charlie's saying they need to bring back the CUDA. They can do the different trim levels like the Challengers. I see a lot of people asking this question on social media. I think they can do good with it. Here's the thing. So if and when we get a CUDA, it's going to be based on a new platform. I doubt very seriously they're going to do anything with the LX. Look for something based on the Ghibli platform, although even that has been... I don't know, sleight of hand, basically we've been told that's not going to be the case. It was going to be a revised LX. So right now, nobody really knows what they're going to do except for Dodge. And again, we're probably, the new cars typically take 3 to 5 years to develop. There's a lot of stuff that has to go into that. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. I would love to see something, CUDA-wise. I would like to see something that would be more of the same with the larger car in mind, maybe a little bit lighter, but good power, strong, big, torquey motors. That's what Americans like. And the only big V8 hot rod sedan that Americans don't get, and that Aussies do, and you can get these in the UAE as well, is the 300, the 6.4 liter 300. So anyway, there's that. Crazy is saying, hey Mason, just found and bought a 2016 Hellcat, 7,100 miles on it. Very nice. Tag still swinging and the headrest and plastic in the rear footboard. The old guy was going in the nursing home. That's kind of how this car was. When I picked it up, it was also a low mileage car. I don't think the trunk was ever opened in this car. Slime Cube is asking, what power level are the stock fuel rails good for on a Hellcat? I'm collecting parts for a full mod 85 conversion and just got dual pumps. Keep what you got. Yeah, I'd go with either Jay's pump or injected engineering. Either way, you'll be doing good. I've seen them, 1,000 horsepower at the flywheel, 1,100 horsepower at the flywheel. So depending on the dyno that you're on, Mustang dyno, 800, 900 on a Mustang dyno. I'd say maybe 850 on a Mustang dyno. At some point, you're going to need to just have a larger reserve of fuel mass. But I mean, I don't know that anybody's really gone out and tested it, but I can tell you that if you've got enough fuel mass running through those lines, you're gonna be in good shape. Like I say, dual pulley car, 275, 265 with a ATI 10% lower, you'll be in really good shape with the stock fuel lines with either Jay's kit or Injected Engineering's kit. Jay's kit's going to be a little bit better than Injected Engineering as far as total fuel mass delivery, but you got to paper up for Jay's kit too. Injected Engineering's kit is good to a solid, I would say 1,000, maybe 1,100 horsepower. And this is again on E85 too. Obviously, you're not going to try to make these kind of numbers with 93 octane. And most guys don't even bother with race gas again at those power levels. But clearly they would carry those numbers as well. So if that's the power band you're looking for, then you'll be just fine. And you don't have to worry about getting a full 4 system, which is don't even get started on that. Slash is in. Sup, brother? Abdul saying, and what's the maximum stall speed for 392 stock converter? If you're asking what it stalls at, I can tell you that it flashes and holds 3,000 RPM. 392s do. If you're asking me what is the biggest converter I would put in one, it would depend on the camshaft, but somewhere around 4,000 if you're really aggressive with it at the drag strip. But at that stage, you'd need a lot of cam, and I would probably be re-gearing and putting a different converter in at the same time. So, and that's when you just go ahead and shell out the coin for a 370 gear, a cam that's going to help it spin, and then get that Edelbrock intake and have it either extrude honed or get that Holley intake, and that's going to be a full-on build, high RPM deal. And again, you got to get ready to spend some cash on that. Hyperbot, how much does it cost to tune a Hellcat? Well, you're looking at $250 to unlock the PCM. You're looking at through HP Tuners a minimum, I think it's $400 for the credits. So you're looking at $700 there just in HP Tuners costing, and then you're looking at the tune itself. Anywhere from $400 tack on top of that. So $1,100 to $1,300 depending on the tuner that you go to. I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to say this: make sure you're dealing with somebody that speaks fluent Mopar. They need to have an eddy current dyno, and they need to have a way to load test that thing as well. So just personal preference on that. Some guys are great at street tuning. They're very experienced with street tuning. I get that. But to properly load test a supercharged car, you've got to have an eddy current dyno. And again, guys that tune on eddy current dynos have a much higher success rate, much lower failure rate than guys that just go, oh yeah, here's a base file, go out there and raise some hell. I am constantly, and when I say constantly, I am like to the point of boredom and nausea data logging this car. And what's funny is I can take my tune, put it on another Hellcat, and it will perform very similarly, but there's always going to be some differences and some things to look at. One of the things a tuner is going to be very in tune with is, again, we're talking about those knock sensors with the tuning for the long tubes. You start throwing boost and spinning these blowers harder, you've got to remember that there's going to be some provisions for numbing those knock sensors, but you never want to turn them completely off. And if any tuner turns off those knock sensors, that's a guy you don't want to be doing business with. Word to the wise on that one. Madera's saying, you see a lot of diesel guys going to 4-wheel drive on launch and then go back to 2-wheel drive mid-pass. Doesn't that shock the drivetrain more than normal? Not really. All you're doing is you're uncoupling the front drive. It depends on the system, but you're uncoupling the hubs or you're uncoupling the transfer case. That's all it is. It's no big deal. And the reason why they do that is because it's just less drag on the power, on the engine itself. Alex is saying a new CUDA based on the new Julia or Ghibli platform would be ideal platform for that new turbo inline 6 or smaller, more compact new wedge V8. Electrification would probably play a role too. Yeah, be looking for that as well. But if you find a, let's say a Ghibli platform, inline 6, turbo, deal me in. You guys know how much I'm into that. In fact, we were having this conversation at the track on Friday, myself and a buddy of mine. He goes, what do you think about those Supras? And if y'all don't know, I am in love with the new Supra. And anything inline 6 with a turbo, I just, for whatever reason, I think that's the neatest thing ever. So, you know, if that's the direction they're going to go, great, that's fine. But we got to start seeing something. And we've got to start seeing something if that's the direction that they're going to go, you know, V6 turbo or what have you. What needs to happen is that there needs to be some kind of a swan song for the V8 guys, you know, for the, especially for the 392. You know, the 5.7 I think will always live on, but if there's a place for innovation, bigger power, but more importantly, upgradability, then that's where it would be. And yeah. So there was boost only, by the way. There's this guy that's got this real pretty Supra. I see him at the track. I mean, he's at the track as often as I am. And he has got that thing now running 11 O's at 126 miles an hour. And you want to talk about a sweetheart of a car. And it just goes 11 O's. I think it's the neatest thing in the world. But anyway, getting back to it. I don't know why I think that's so awesome. Mike's saying, hey Mason, swapping everything from my 08 Super B to an 09 6-speed Challenger. Everything except trans should swap over, right? Should. Even engine bolting up to the trans. Yeah, there's no change in 08 to anything in 09, I don't believe. So you should be good there. Obviously, yeah, you should be good there. I don't see anything that would hold you back from that. There wasn't any mid-year changes that I can remember. So yeah, you should be good. Got to sit there and kind of rack my brain. Fuel system's the same. All the motor mount positions are the same. Yeah, everything should be the same. So I'm saying, I feel if they do a CUDA, they are going to blow it. It is going to be so hard to match the awesome looks and heritage of the CUDA, and they already did the Challenger, which is the same platform. There is a litany of guys that would agree with that. My opinion is this. I'm cool, real cool with the Challenger. I like a lot the way that the new Charger looks as a wide body. In that the Charger doesn't harken back to anything. It really doesn't try to do a retro thing. If they were to do a CUDA, I would hope, and I mean sincerely hope, that they did not do some kind of placatory, you know, let's make the grille kind of like the CUDA, but not quite. Let's make it, you know, a little bit too new looking, but have some kind of retro cue. In other words, I don't like retro cues just for the sake of retro cues. The old school cars looked a certain way, and it was like form before function, but it was a style all its own with the Coke bottle look and everything else. It would be cool if the CUDA could have its own unique and personal identity, just like the Charger did, and in a way just like the Challenger did, in that the Challenger was a big, beefy, you know, very well stylized car that's roughly the size of a B body, but had the looks of the E body, and it just kind of did everything well. Big, comfortable car, big engine, goes really fast. The CUDA, to me, needs to represent a step past that. It needs to represent a step forward in the lineage for Mopar. It's great that Dodge has done so well with the Challenger, but we're 13 model years into it now? Um, I want to say that as good as that run is, we've got to be looking to the future. We've got to be looking ahead as opposed to keeping looking behind us. The kids of today, the youth of today, needs a car that they can call their own, that they can hold on to and call their own. The Camaro has done an interesting job of that, but they haven't done it in a way that was, or that the car just didn't have a broad enough appeal. You know, you can't really see out of the thing. The windows are only this big. Chicks don't really dig it from a driving standpoint, just, you know, based on, you know, purchasing statistics. None of that is there. And so because of that, it didn't do that well. Dodge has a fantastic following across all ages and across sexes and incomes and everything else. Everybody likes the Dodge. They need to maintain that. They need to maintain that global appeal, but just take a step further and give the youth, you know, the kids, you know, guys that are, you know, 27, 30 years old and younger, something that they can call their own. Because right now, the Challenger, as awesome as it is, let's be real here for just a second. This isn't going to be nobody's going to want to hear this, but when the Challenger was released in 1970, you know, that's 50 years ago. And if you were 40 years old in 1970 and you bought a brand new Challenger, the odds of you being dead are pretty good. You know, if you're in your 30s, you're about that age where you're like, you made it, but barely. And that's the thing. The kids back then, you know, the 20-year-olds, the 30-year-olds, they're all still alive and kicking. They own new versions of this, and they're out raising hell with it, but that's from their era. And what bums me out is that, you know, the Mustang does a good job of being retro. Nobody does retro like Jeep. And of course, Porsche with the 911, you know, doesn't get any more retro than that. That thing still looks like a Volkswagen Beetle that's been smashed. But the reality is that this is a car for people's dads and granddads. I want to see something fresh, new, technologically advanced, faster than hell, upgradable. And so let me rekindle my earlier rant. Marketing. When it comes to Dodge, again, it is as though you've got people that have only experienced cars from an abstract point of view. They've experienced performance cars from an abstract point of view. People that are overwhelmingly interested in these types of vehicles only in that it's part of their job to be interested in them. Units to sell. You get the idea. Supporting a TV show that revolves around modifying and building your own car, all the meanwhile not allowing your customers to modify or build upon your own vehicle through any parts waterfalling, is a freaking hysterical thing. And I think that's something that we need to keep circling back around at, because, you know, that heritage that I was talking about, that heritage ends when this car gets discontinued. Y'all know that, right? The Charger maybe also. And I get it with the Charger too, because there's a big following for the Charger. But when we're talking about retro styling, that's all she wrote. This car goes away, who are you going to market to? I mean, I guess you can market it to the youth. It's the only throwback true muscle car. Well, to be honest, muscle car only rings a bell with people that were around during the muscle car era. Again, that ended in 1971. Some will say it ended in 74, Super Duty Trans Am and all, but you know, it had its last breath, let's say, in 1974-ish, give or take. And there you have it. So, again, need to see something fresh, need to see something new, because if Dodge doesn't really take the reins in that push, in that drive to have something for the youth of today, then their heritage you might as well just stop. Because in the next 5 years, statistically speaking, anybody that was alive during this muscle car era, the true beginnings, the beginnings of the muscle car era, they're not going to be around to appreciate anything that you do. We want to see, not that I was around then, but many folks like that want to see where the brand is going. Where are they going to leave it? And where is it going to start for the next generation? Abdul's asking, where would you tune your car? Kurt, Joshua, Jays, of those, Josh. Alex is saying, also I'm told the HP70 starts slipping around 516 pound-feet of torque, but then it can be tuned to handle 650 to 700. It's debatable. How much harder would it be? How would that be on the hardware train? In other words, he's asking, what can you really do with the transmission? Well, on a Mustang dyno, they are almost guaranteed to slip at around 530 foot-pounds of torque to the rear wheels, which is to say that somewhere around 600 foot-pounds of torque, it's going to slip. That's 600 foot-pounds of torque at the flywheel. You can technically command more line pressure, and that's also with commanding more line pressure to get to that number. I wouldn't take it anywhere past that. You can get it upgradable, or it is upgradable, but it's very harsh in some cases when you get them upgraded. Look to do an HP90 swap if you're going to go over those numbers. And but I will say this, if you're not taking it to the drag strip and you're primarily on the street just kind of playing around with it, if you're running the Nittos drag radials on the street, now I really wouldn't worry too much about it, because you will light the tires up before that 500 odd foot-pounds of torque to the rear wheels. If you're running it out the back door, your torque values are obviously going to be lower, horsepower is going to be higher, so you should be okay. But just know that going into it, you are going to be limited. So, and take it with a grain of salt too. I mean, you got to remember, these cars are heavy. So, a lot of the failures have more to do with just getting the mass, than just dealing with the initial inertial load that you've got to overcome to get one of these things moving. Twan's checking in and saying, what up, B? What do you think is more reliable or dependable on 392, cam or boost with drop-ins? Well, boost with drop-ins for sure is going to be more reliable, provided that you've got, well, enough ring gap in it. Because see, that's the thing. I mean, you can go drop-ins and still not run enough ring gap and run into a problem. But again, it depends on the type of boost. Now you're talking about, again, we're just talking about transmissions. Could be talking about transmission longevity. That's another issue you could potentially run into. So, dependable, reliable. If we're talking about a stock cam, it's going to be more drivable. So that may be really more the value that we're seeking. If you go with a milder cam, though, and one that's going to get you power everywhere, don't try to max effort one of these things. The cars are too heavy. Unless you're planning on going converter and a gear and a bunch of weight reduction, you're better off going with a cam that gets you power everywhere and can help you, really climb on the back half of a pull, as opposed to having the car nose over. In that respect, you can go with a cam, leave everything else stock, and that car will be absolutely dead on reliable. I would just caution you, I mean, we're talking a long-term reliable, because you're not overstressing the transmission. But I'll caution you on this. Don't go to the stage nth degree. I mean, stage 2 and leave it at that. I don't want to get too deep just yet into cam specs and any of that other kind of stuff. But when I put cams together for 392s, it's one of two profiles, basically, that will actually work. And to be honest with you, to go more aggressive, we just don't have intake manifolds that will allow for that until you get into like, you know, an extrude-honed Edelbrock or one of the, well, let me just leave it at that, because if to go any farther, you go with the sheet metal style intake, anything along those lines, the short runner stuff, you're going to lose so much torque down low. You're going to have to go with a converter if it's an automatic, and you're going to have to re-gear it. That's just, well, if it's an automatic for sure. If it's a manual, you've already got the most aggressive gear, and so you already know what you're up against with that. But I've got a cam that I put together for a manual transmission car. Runs its ass off, but I mean, you've got to launch it like it. You got to basically whip it like a rented mule, or else it's going to fall on its face. And that's, again, the problem that you run into with some of these things. Big hell of a number, though. But I would never recommend it. In fact, I kind of wish I wouldn't have mentioned that, Cam. Hyperbot's saying, if I wanted really good 315 tires, would I need new wheels for a Hellcat? Yes, you will. Absolutely, you will. Especially if you're getting the Nittos, because lately these Nittos are a little bit big for their size rating. Yeah, you'll need at least a set of 10.5-inch wide wheels. Mike Gordon's asking, also need to replace auto trans in the 08 Super B. Should I try to find an exact trans from the same year model SRT? I've been told the 5.7 trans works. Just confused on what other trans will work. I would probably stick with the same generation. That's going to be a NAG 1 if it's going to be an automatic. And yeah, I would just stick with the NAG 1 and call it good. Hang on just a second here. Sean's checking in, saying a little nugget to get you back into the 147 60-foot time zone. I'm on hold until September air. Going to need to shoot for that 999. I need negative 500 feet. Well, certainly with lower humidity. I know that it's been, God, man, it has been so humid down here. When I had this car at the drag strip last, and this is before the chunks flew off of my drag setup, the humidity was 97% at the worst. And I think the best that it was all night was 90%. And for boosted cars, that is I mean, you'd rather have it hot and dry than slightly cooler but much wetter. Let's see. Oh, Charlie's asking, what's your take on hub dynos versus inertia wheel dynos? Do you think one is more accurate than the other? I like them both. So an inertial style, if you guys aren't familiar, an inertia dyno is just, it's like a Dyno Jet 248. It's a 660-pound drum. And what the dyno is doing is it is measuring how long it takes that drum to accelerate from one point to the next. When it stops accelerating, that's when it'll shut the run down in some cases. In others, you still have to hit the red button. At any rate, it's just it is a fixed mass that you are accelerating to an X variable. I love them because they're unaffected by anything. I mean, you can get corrected numbers out of them if you've got a weather station and all of that, but those are neat just for getting a number. Those are neat for just checking the general health of a vehicle. And it can take away some of the issues that an eddy current dyno will give you, which is, well, if it's a loaded eddy current dyno, you're going to be dealing with the load of a vehicle. So if I have a truck with a 302 and I have a car with a 302, when I would have to run the truck with the same load range as the car to get an A-B comparison engine for engine, as opposed to loaded versus unloaded. Now, when it comes to what is better, well, I prefer a loaded dyno each and every time as a tuning tool. To me, dynos are no different. I got a wall back here, it's full of wrenches and everything else. It's no different than any other tool that's in the arsenal. It's something that you have to do your job correctly. And that's all it is. Whatever numbers are coming out of that machine are there specifically to judge A, the health of the vehicle, B, to create a load in a safe environment to where you can data log the vehicle to collect the proper data to adjust tuning or to qualify or validate a tune. That's really what that dyno is there for. And you know, people talk about dyno numbers. I hate dyno numbers. I mean, I love them, but I hate them. You know, it's funny because Revlon put down 666 to the rear wheels. It green screened that on the Mustang dyno at Pikes Performance, which I thought was great. I mean, that's just kind of fun. You know, a little bit coincidental that it's a Hellcat and it dropped a 666, but I'll take it, right? The funny thing though is, you know, whether it's a hub, whether it's a Mustang, whether it's a eddy current, dyno jet, dyno comp, or anything else, if it's a loaded dyno, that's the one that you're going to want. That's the one you're going to want to tune with. And whatever number it puts down, that's the number that it puts down. Now, what's the conversion factor, like dyno jet to dyno comp to, you know, Mustang? It just depends, man. Then you got 248 too. So don't forget, you got 248, which is your true inertia. Then you have dyno jet. When I say 248, that's also a dyno jet. So dyno jet 248. Then any of the loaded dyno jets. Then you have dyno comp, which is a hub. And if you guys aren't familiar with the hub style, they're actually kind of neat. They take the rear tires off the car, so you lose that rolling resistance, so to speak, the weight of the tire and everything else. But you bolt the dyno to the hub of the car. Kind of a neat concept. And then you have like a Mustang dyno. The differences, so 248 is typically going to read the highest. The inertia is typically going to read the highest out of the group. And then from there, you know, the difference between the different dynos is around 5 to 8%. Sometimes a little bit higher. The main thing that you want to look at when you're looking at dyno numbers is, number one, what is the correction factor? Is it uncorrected? Is it standard, which would be the STD correction, which is what most people will publish? Is it SAE? That is what I am used to, SAE corrected numbers. And even from there, if it's an older dyno, is that SAE J1307 or 1304, whatever it is? If not, then that number is going to be artificially a little bit higher. If you're only looking at numbers, then you need to make sure if the dyno has a weather station, the corrected numbers, what's the barometric pressure that it's reading, what's the temperature that it's reading. Those are huge things. As a matter of fact, that is the one thing that will cause the biggest headaches under the sun when you're pulling numbers out of a car. If your barometric pressure is showing very high, let's say it's screwed up and it's defaulting to 31 inches of mercury, what's going to happen is that means that your correction factor is going to be basically very high. And so if the car makes 100 horsepower and the computer thinks that your 100 horsepower was made at 31 or 32 inches of mercury, which I've seen, it'll say that the car is making like 90 or 89 horsepower. Corrected. I've also seen it the other way, where the dyno jet, you know, you put down 100 horsepower, and the dyno jet, the weather station says, oh, it's 26 inches of mercury, and then it corrects the living hell out of it and says you made 115 horsepower, something along those lines. That's kind of the wild variations you can get. So again, you know, I try not to get too wrapped up in dyno numbers. I know that they're important. Their level of importance to me, just in speaking terms, is very, very low, only in that I want to see a comparative data set to show that whatever I'm working with is a healthy example of whatever it is that I'm working with. So anyway, sorry, I kind of trailed off on that one. But as far as, the question is one more accurate than the other? They are all equally inaccurate. And what I mean by that is, you know, a 248 inertia style is going to be accurate only in that it will give you a number. An eddy current dyno, like a dyno comp or anything like that, is going to give you a loaded number. And because of that, it's reading the information differently. It's going to give a different result. I personally prefer to use a loaded dyno's results in any conversation that I have, number one. And number two, make sure that it is SAE corrected numbers. Now you can show the uncorrected, but just make sure that you show SAE corrected numbers, not standard, the STD corrected, because that's bullshit. Because that is an older, it's an older correction factor. It's a very old correction factor, as a matter of fact. Like from the 60s correction factor, or other than that, probably from the 40s or 30s, now that I'm thinking about it. So yeah. Christian's asking, have you noticed how much hate the Mach 1 is getting? Yeah, what the hell is up with that? I don't understand. I don't get it. Anyway, most people say it's not a true Mach 1 because there's no hood scoop. I've never rolled my eyes so hard in my life. No kidding. First of all, Mach 1 from 71, 72, 73, they didn't have hood scoops. Do you remember the Mach 1 hood? Duh, it didn't have a hood scoop. So I don't get it. Not only do I not get it, it doesn't make any sense. And for anybody to get on a bandwagon of boo-hooing over that is a dumbass argument. I mean, I personally am a massive fan of the Mach 1. And it's turning me back into a massive fan of Ford. Not that I ever really gave up on Ford or anything, but damn, Ford, good job, man. I mean, wearing this suit real well. That's all I'll say about that. Twan's checking in saying, I heard the new Supra are just BMW Z4 engines. Is that true? It is very true. Yes. Same exact engine. Uncle Seeker's saying, kind of like the early 2010s Camaro. That car had wonderful retro style. The new ones, not so much. Early 2010s had great interior retro style. Uncle Seeker saying, you mentioned the Camaro as I was typing the previous comment. I like it. Mike Horn saying, not too comfortable pushing 1,000 horsepower on my stock 09 TR6060. So have a guy selling me a built TR6060 from a 2016 Hellcat. Will everything match up on my 09 Challenger? Aren't the gears different? Yeah, the gears internally are significantly different. You're going to find that out real quick in first gear when your 226 gear versus your 297 gear, I believe is the split. Anyway, yeah, that's you're going to notice that straight away. But at that power level, you're going to need a little bit of a less aggressive first gear. But even still, yeah, I believe it will bolt up though. None of the bolt patterns changed that I'm aware of. I don't think so anyway. We should be good on that. Shawnee's saying the 1320 should have been 300 pounds lighter, a stripper with 330 gear and maybe a little north of 500 horsepower. Easy mid to low 11-second car. Your thoughts? Man, look. So, believe it or not, okay, check this out. When the 1320 was first released, when the 1320 was first announced, I had read that they had raided the parts bin and threw a 370 gear in that car. I jumped out of my chair. I mean, it was, this is happening. I'm putting in an order. I called the dealership. I had spec'd one out. And again, it was going to be B5 blue, 1320. That's what I wanted. And I thought, no, I'm going to stick with white knuckle. So it's going to be either that or a white one. And I was asking about a gear. And at the time, they didn't have any information. They were saying it didn't really say. It didn't say anything about it. And I was like, oh, shit. Come to find out, that wasn't the case. Bummer, right? But then I was thinking, okay, well, maybe they're going to try to slide something in there a little bit, in terms of power. Never did happen. And then I was, hoping against hope. Maybe there'd be a different intake manifold. Maybe, there's nothing been released yet. They're just not talking about it yet. Still, not a zilch, nothing. So to say that I was a little bit bummed out about where the 1320 wound up is an understatement. Because, and you have to remember, okay, so you can't look at the 1320 in a vacuum. You have to look at it in the light of the times that it was released, or at least announced. This is right on the heels of the Demon. And then they're gonna, I mean, put this out into the world that the 1320 is coming, naturally aspirated. The grass, remember this? The grassroots their answer to grassroots racing or something like that. And I'm just going, oh my God. I mean, I was like a little kid. I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I mean, it was gonna have to happen. But as the facts came out and as everything was being slowly trickled to the public, you know, I made that phone call to the dealership and said, hey, you know, does this thing have a 370 gear? Because I could have lived with everything else being the same. I was just going to take parts off of the Shalandra, put them on the 1320, and call it good. And then come to find out, no different gear. I mean, you can get it with a rear seat delete. You know, you can buy the other seat for $1. And I'm just going, oh no. Are you kidding me? It's just basically like a trim level thing. And then I really got pissed when the gear ratio deal wasn't a thing because they put the 309 in the Demon. And at the time, I got a little birdie that told me that they were going to option 309s for red eyes. No word yet on Hellcats. And I'm going, oh shit, this is going to get good. Because that would mean that everything was going to start to waterfall down into the red eyes at the time. And so I'm just going, oh shit. NA guys are going to start just trouncing people. And it didn't work out that way. And so, yeah, we didn't get pretty much anything that we hoped we would get with the 1320. Mike's saying he's also selling McLeod clutch. McLeod makes an only run McLeod clutches. If it's a new clutch or a fairly new clutch, you'll be in good shape. But be careful buying used clutches or used flywheels for that matter. Let's see. Zephyr's asking, what up, Professor Mason? Call me crazy, but do you think it would be possible to put a 15 and up Charger dash and a 15 up Challenger? No, I don't know that it would because the Chargers are more narrow, so you'd have to cut it up pretty good. Probably wouldn't go that route. The Black Scat's checking in saying my dad was 19 in 1970, so those cars from his era. I'm 30 and don't get me wrong, I do love the Challenger's look, but I wouldn't mind seeing something kind of fresh. See, I'm already talking about it. Guys, that's my point. You know, I mean, I wasn't alive for that part of the history of these cars. I mean, I'm just only old enough to be able to appreciate them from a first-hand standpoint in that I saw them being raced. But, you know, I mean, and I can kind of remember them when they were more or less disposable. I mean, you got to remember the original cars. I mean, they were playthings at best. It's not like they built them to last. Cars were dollar for dollar cheaper, not just obvious dollar, you know, inflationary cheaper, but, you know, as it pertains to your average income, they were cheaper, and people would just turn them, and you know, it just didn't matter. So, yeah, we need something fresh for this generation. And look, I'll be honest with you. At some point, you've got to look at these cars and just go, they've had their time. You know, they've done a great job. Let's retire it and let's bring something new, some fresh blood into this. Some fresh air, so to speak. Right now, they ain't doing it. Let's see. Car guy saying, Corvette hit it out of the park, completely refreshed. You have to be different. Yeah, I agree with that, man. And you know what? I'm not even a fan of the C8. I know, weird, right? I'm not a big fan of the C8, and I think it's awesome that they did it. So, let's see. HU37 say, how much of a role do you think the election will have on new cars? If the government passes more green legislation, FCA will have to look at car design, smaller displacement, lighter cars, and electric. Don't worry about that. There are ways to get to where you need to be there. And quite honestly, it doesn't really matter. All of these higher horsepower engines knock down great freeway mileage numbers. You know, the efficiency is unbelievable. The kind of fuel economy that these modern vehicles get is nutty. As a matter of fact, let's examine that point. I'm pointing like you can see it. The work truck. All right, I was able to. There's a Buc-ee's that sells ethanol-free fuel. It's 92 octane, and every once in a while I'll fill up with that with the work truck just because the truck loves it. It runs like a top, but the fuel economy is unbelievable in this truck with that fuel. Freeway, 25 miles per gallon. In a 5,500 pound, about 5,300 pound truck with a 5.7 Hemi and 323 gears. Believe me, you can knock down some really good fuel economy numbers with these things. And there's always the gas guzzler tax that people will always pay when they want these types of cars. Uncle Stinkford's hollering out at Twan. Shawnee's saying 99 to present, you can make a case that we are in the greatest muscle car era. As far as fast cars, just not as much variety. Everything runs 14s or faster, even a V6. That's a good point, Sean. I mean, look at it like this. It's not that long ago where a 14-second car was the norm for a hot rod. 13s, that was a fast car. That was something that it was either fast or somebody knew how to drive it. 12s were like, holy crap, that's a quick car on the street. And of course, 11s was pretty freaking racy. And now, you know how it is right now. Shoot, I mean, 10s are the new 12s, you know, and so on and down the line. What's funny to me is that ET doesn't equate to fun though. And for me, you know, like, what's the most fun? What is a very fun range? I'll tell you something like a low 13 to a low 12-second car. That is when the thing is a lot of fun if it's a smaller car. The bigger cars, they just need to be faster because you can't really play with them as much. Not that I mean, rail with this thing, but, you know, on long sweepers and stuff like that. But the fact remains that, you know, a smaller car, something that's light that runs, say, 1320s in the 1320, that's a really fun car. So, and now, I mean, like I say, you've got the Supra that you can get with not that much work down into the mid 11s. Again, very fun car. You can do a lot of things with that kind of power. You get much more than that, and autocross is out of the question for the most part. You know, you're going to have to really worry about temperatures, heating, things like that on closed circuits. So, you know, that sweet spot where everything just kind of works and works long term, I don't know. But yeah, good point on that deal, Sean. Let's see, SRT Bone saying, what brand pump gas do you run in your Hellcat? Buc-ee's, for one, which is kind of a conglomeration of different suppliers there. But there's an Exxon station right up the street from where I live, and that's where I get the gas for my car, usually. Let's see. Mr. Blacktop saying, let's see, seems like FCA is moving towards half e-torque and half gasoline motor for mid-trim levels. Can you shed some light on how these engines work? Well, the e-torque is pretty cool. It's just it's an electric motor augmenting the engine. I mean, that's basically how that system works. Obviously, it's more of a Band-Aid than anything else, but it's a way around dealing with, you know, separate electric motors on hubs and things like that. And there's a lot of systems like that too, by the way. In fact, there was one that I actually kind of liked, somewhat similar, but it was an electric supercharger in that it was a electric motor that you would bolt up almost like an AC unit would look on your engine, except it had a cog drive, and flip the thing on and hit it. And obviously, it's like, think of it like a centrifugal supercharger bracket. and that would drive a drive belt on the crankshaft, and that would just basically spin the engine harder. It would help to spin that engine. Same type of a concept. Cool, except that you have to have a bracket that will manage, 200 foot-pounds of torque. So, do you trust somebody to do that, to manufacture that? I don't know. But I will say this, there's a lot of cool stuff like that that's going to be coming, and it's not necessarily all bad. You've got electric motors that will act as a coupler with automatic transmissions. You've got the hub style electric motors that will also help to augment. You'll have those up front with a traditional power plant going to the back. Any of those types are more or less hybrid. They're hybrid. There's different levels to that hybrid as well. Some you can run on just electric, some you can't. But there's a lot of really cool stuff coming, and I think that once the battery technology gets better, once folks start to understand that this is a total drivetrain system, once you get past the fact that it's no longer going to be the very organic engine, the suck, squeeze, bang, blow, intake, compression, fire, exhaust, something that you can relate with. And that's where a lot of people really don't want to let go of internal combustion, because it's almost like an organic thing. You can totally understand, it eats gasoline, it sucks in air, it farts out exhaust. I mean, it's a living thing, and it's like an electric thing really isn't. But once folks get past that, you start to see some of this electric stuff for what it's worth, it'll blow your mind what kind of performance you can get out of these things. Like, it's nuts, the augmentation. So, but that's really how those systems work. They all work in concert. They're all a little bit different, but they all basically conspire to do the same thing. Hopefully I answered that. Chris Harris is asking, got my cam installed on my 6.1 today, and it ran weird even after the tune. The check engine light came on. Would you know where this would come from? It could come from a bunch of different areas. It just depends on what codes that it was throwing. A lot of times it'll come from a misfire code, which you just turn that off in the tune. That's just because reasons. I won't dive too deep into that. That's one of the first ones that comes up. Another code that'll pop up, especially after a tune, will be the PO40 1. Anyway, it's coolant temperature not high enough. You just turn that one off in the tune. Also, if it's running weird, that could be the VE tables not exactly sorted out very well. Again, it's going to depend on who tuned it, who's your tuner. But that could kind of fall in lockstep there. Idle numbers, depending on the cam, you may need to kick your idle up a little bit to start to get away from some of the misfire codes and things like that. I know you're not going to want to hear that because you want to hear it chop, but that's another area where you can, kind of eliminate some of the issues and get some drivability back. I'm just trying to think of some stuff off the top of my head that I've seen or that I've run into. If it's got long tubes, could be dealing with an exhaust leak. Exhaust leaks on these modern cars are hell to deal with because you get oxygen gets sucked into the exhaust system, and the car thinks that it's running leaner, so it starts throwing fuel at it. Basically just pisses off the computer in general. You can see that typically on one bank only though. So data logs, codes, all that kind of stuff are going to need to be what you're going to look at. But that'll at least kind of give you a way to look. Also, smoke check the thing, make sure it doesn't have a major exhaust leak. That could be another thing. Shawnee's saying, I think it's fair that people want a shaker on the Mach 1. However, the engine is always the heart of the car. But my 2004 Mach 1 and 2018 Scat Pack both had shaker, and I loved them. They are fun. 37 saying HU3. The biggest problem with Mopar is that it needs to appeal to women. Most Mopar owners are men. Ford seems to do fairly well with selling Mustangs to women. They do a great job of it. In fact, for the longest time, I mean, it was the secretary's car was always a Mustang. It didn't matter what you did. You know, if the girl was and again, not for nothing, but these were just very common, you know, very, very common professions for women for the day, you know, back then. But, you know, teachers, Mustangs, secretaries, Mustangs, anybody that was in, you know, the healthcare system, chicks, Mustangs. That's just kind of the way that it went. Young professionals, college students, Mustangs, Mustang Sally, you know, so that's kind of the problem is but here's the thing, ergonomically, Mustangs have got it figured out. Ergonomically also, in terms of just efficiency with the layout, given the size and the space that you have, Mustang is more efficient than the Mopars at how their cars are laid out. Chicks kind of dig that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons why the Mustang does so great with women. Number one, it's a smaller car, easy to manage, easier to drive. Number two, more affordable. You know, girls are a lot better with money sometimes than guys are. So there's that. But to be certain, yeah, they do, for whatever reason that there is. You know, my sister's got a Mustang, a GT, 6-speed car. But the reality is that there is just so much stronger of a push there. But I will, for females. That being said, I see a lot of the girls driving Challengers, man. And a whole lot of girls drive Chargers, especially those with kids. So, just saying. Let's see, Mike's asking, am I crazy to want a manual Challenger 700 to 1,000 horsepower? I know a lot of high horsepower autos for fast shifting, etc. Is it practical to have that much of a high horsepower manual? Thank you for answering my questions. I've driven them. They're a lot of fun. In fact, the manuals don't get fun until you're up around that 700 horsepower to the rear wheel mark. And that's just been my experience with the cars. And, you know, you've got a very mild first gear, and that's part of the reason why they're a little bit sluggish until you start throwing power at them. But that being said, when you get them to that power level, all of those issues kind of go away, and they actually become a lot of fun to drive, and it makes the car feel lighter too. So I've just enjoyed it. TU's checking in saying, "Sup, yeah, I just paused Joe Rogan's fight companion for UFC 251, Masvidal, to stop by and show respect to B. Mason. Thank you very much. Take care, brother. You too, man." And yes, I know I need to, when I hop off of this, I need to circle back around and check out Fight Pass and see how everybody's doing. But get back to the fight. Get back to the fight. That's going to be so good too, by the way. Oh, got him. Yeah. So when Masvidal was, if y'all aren't UFC fans, Camaro Usman's world champion, awesome fighter, but he's fighting Jorge Masvidal, who's just a freaking, I don't know, I like the guy. He came up by doing backyard brawls and stuff like that, and I used to play around with some of that shit, and so I'm just going, oh sweet, you know, but you know, nowhere at his level though. Not even close. But I have been hit in the eye more than one time. Let's see, Chris McVeigh saying, what is the difference between a pony car and a muscle car? I feel like the term muscle car is thrown around very liberally, as a matter of fact, to say the least. So a muscle car is going to be, think B-body Mopar, think Chevelle, okay? Think Galaxy 500. That is a muscle car. A larger car with a big ass engine. That's what a muscle car is. Something that the bouncer at the local titter is going to get in and drive home. That's a muscle car. Pony cars, on the other hand, are going to be a little bit more fleet of foot. They're going to be basically like a middleweight versus a heavyweight. They're going to have very, very good power, typically very well balanced power. Think of a pony car as something that does well at everything. Think of a muscle car that is really set up more for straight line, street racing, from a dig, stoplight bruiser type of a thing. That's going to be your muscle car. A sports car, to me, to take the conversation a little bit farther, sports car is more of a roadster to me. I've never envisioned sports car like, I don't see a Lambo as a sports car. That's a hyper car. A sports car is going to be something that you're going out to have fun in. I like to think of sports cars as, like just kind of a small frisky dog that you want to play with. So 350Z falls into that. The MX-5, like the Miata, falls into that category. And then you've got some weird ones like the Supra, which, is it a muscle car? Is it a sports car? Is it a pony car? You almost have to put it in a pony car guise, but I just know what I would do with one if I had my hands on one, and that would be to just absolutely be a 9-second car, like within the first 30 days. But that's kind of how I see the layout. You get into stuff like the Lambos, the GT40s, things like that, those hypercars. That's where none of the rules even apply anymore. That's just the most with the biggest price tag, and that's where those cars fall in line. Again, I don't consider them sports cars because they're not sporting to me. They're not fun. I can't look at that and go, hey, that looks like a shitload of fun. Just going out and acting dumb or taking out like on a run through Austin or Pacific Coast Highway or like Tail of the Dragon or something like that. I wouldn't take one of those cars on that because it just doesn't taste right. But you get me in a 350 or a 370, or you get me in a Cayman or something like that. I might have a little bit different, or a Supra for that matter. Then I'll have a completely different idea. But I will say this, pony car, it is all but mandatory to have a manual transmission in that thing. Just my O2. If you're going to be doing a lot of drag racing, yeah, get you a Mustang, throw a blower on it, get the automatic, do the things, do the second gear lockout, and hit it. But, go run a high 9. But if you want to have a fun car, pony car, it's got to have a freaking manual transmission. Let's see, Chris is saying, hey man, how's it going? About to change the oil on my Challenger Scat Pack for the first time. Do you recommend the Pennzoil 040 or a different brand and weight? I like the Pennzoil 040. Go with the Mopar filter, the SRT filter, and let me get you that part number real quick. Hold on. Hang on. Go to the parts cabinet over here. Where the hell is it? Oh shit, I gotta order one. Alright. Anyway. Thought I had one. I don't. So, hey buddy, what's up? Got a visitor to the show. What's up, Torquay? But anyway, stick with the SRT filter, that Mopar filter, and yeah, Pennzoil works great. You're gonna love it. Mobil 1's fine too. People say that that's gonna void your warranty. I don't know if that's really the case, but yeah, stick with the Pennzoil. It works great. Carzilla is saying, if you haven't drove a Can-Am, do it. Sounds like fun. Trying saying, love the shirt. Oh, thank you very much, man. Appreciate it. Luke saying, whatever happened to the V6 Challenger idea, the Giulia platform? Call me biased, but Dodge should stick with the 392. So the problem is a couple of things. The Giulia wouldn't accommodate the V8 as easily as it needed to be economically viable. That's my understanding of it. It also fell outside of the parameters of what Dodge wanted as a vehicle that they wanted to adhere to the brand, so to speak. Like the Challenger, it's a big car, big horsepower, all of that. To go with the Giulia in that Ferrari-derived V6, great engine, by the way. But to go that route would be a complete departure from what they had been selling. And that's the branding and the marketing and everything else was driving this narrative, not the Giulia. So that's when the whole, the tide kind of changed and they started talking about the Ghibli platform. Even that had some potential issues, and so then it was a revised LX platform, but that's basically kind of how all of that worked out. At least my understanding of it is. Let's see. Really? You're kidding. I like that, by the way. It's a cool name. Saying 2013 Challenger 5.7 manual, what is the best performance gear upgrade? 370 is what you've probably already got. Depending on the wheel and tire package that you have. If you have a 20-inch wheel and tire package, you have a 3.92 rear gear, and that is about as far as you can go. Sean saying, yeah, 390 works great with a TR6060. Yeah, check your build sheet. If you had the 18s, I think you got a 370 gear. If you had the 20s, you got the 390. So go with that one. Let's see. HU3. Oh yeah, saying his tuner prefers the load bearing. Yeah, and well, there's reasons for that. So you can load on a load bearing dyno. You can load the car to where you can be wide open. And let's say you tell the dyno, I only want you to rev or allow an RPM of 3,500 RPM. It's just like an engine dyno at that point, where you can roll into the throttle. And by the way, if you've never heard a Hellcat or a Red Eye or anything supercharged being load tested, it's kind of creepy. The car, like a Vet with an F1, is really creepy at like 4,500 RPM load. Anyway, you roll into the throttle, me to the point. Roll into the throttle, and the tack will go yeah, and it'll just stop. No matter how much more throttle you get it will only rev to whatever command RPM you give it. So with these positive displacement blowers, they're just sucking in every amount of air, and it sounds like you're at full load, and it doesn't sound like anything you've ever heard before, because it's just sitting right there. Like if you were to just, I don't know, maybe crawl underneath the hood of the car while it's wide open. But in this case, you know, normally the car is running like that. It's going through an RPM sweep on the street, not on the dyno. It's just, yeah, and it just has this sound that is creepy. I love it. Anyway, but that's why he wants that, because he can load that thing at whatever load range he wants, and he'll look at. I mean, you're not going to sit there and hang it. You'll hang it for about, say, 2 seconds at the most, and you get out of it. But what you're looking at is you're looking at knock retard. You're looking at fuel injector duty cycle. You're looking at a ton of different data points. You do the load test, save your data log, and then you go back and review it and make whatever changes you need to make to the tune. Madera is asking, does anybody offer a crate Gen 1 392 Hemi? I'd like to build a Dodge Hot Rod or Rat Rod, but I want to keep it classic and carbureted. No, they don't. I don't know of anybody that offers up either the 345, 392, or any of the baby Hemis, like the DeSoto Hemis. There are, and I don't know them off the top of my head, but there are some specialists in the Gen 1 Hemi world, and I would look for one of those guys. Actually, the 392 might not be your best bet. I think the 345 is a little bit better for hot rodding, if memory serves me correctly. I think it handles RPM better. Might have a smaller journal size or something like that. But just something to consider. Don't knock either one of them, because you can still make some pretty good power with those engines. So Sean saying, my car stock made 630 at the wheels at Pikes on the Mustang dyno. Yeah, your car's strong, man. Ferocious 1980s checking in saying, I bought a bottle of Boostane, but unsure if I want to use it because it says you have to tune your car when using it. No, you don't. Can I throw it in and drive it, or is it tune critical to get the benefits from it? Not really. So what most of the guys will do is you put some Boostane in it just as a preventative measure. Now I think, what is it, like 3 ounces or something like that to get it to 93 to 96 or 97 octane. It's absolutely not necessary to get a tune. Just don't try to, it will not do you any good to try to climb that octane rating up anywhere past, say, 100. Whatever the, so was it 3.5 ounces to get to 100? Anyway, whatever that amount is, don't try to go over that. I've done track pass after track pass after track pass trying to find benefit with that. And just with the stock tune, it's just not there. So a little bit as, you know, as a part, it's just basically just as some cheap insurance. Yeah, you're fine. Don't worry about it. I mean, shit, I was running race gas in this thing with no tune, data logging it, checking it, and it was just fine. Shawnee's saying 666 is factory freak zone. Well, it wasn't factory tune though. That was with a little bit of fueling, but still factory timing. Let's see. HU37 is asking, how is the correction factor affected by being naturally aspirated versus boosted? It depends on the type of boost, and it also depends on the compression ratio. So the higher the compression ratio on a naturally aspirated car, typically the more that you will see, mainly because the variance is just higher. You've got a higher horsepower. But the big part of that is in timing and fuel quality. If it's hot and you can't run the same kind of timing that you can when it's cool, or if you're running pump gas in a very high compression car, or application, I should say, naturally aspirated, but you're trying to run on pump gas, can't run the same timing, issues like that, that's where there'll be a big issue there, difference there. So just know that coming into it. Boosted, on the other hand, boosted can be a little bit different. On a positive displacement supercharger, there's so many things that can cause the positive displacement, heat soak being the primary issue. You've got to be very specific when you're comparing run for run with a boosted car with a positive displacement supercharger. The percentages are all the same. By the way, let me just kill part of that question right now. The percentages are always going to be the same. It's not going to matter one to the next to the next. If you're talking about a dyno correction number for a specific horsepower, that all has everything to do with atmospheric conditions, has nothing to do with what the car's putting out. But a turbocharger, a little bit different animal. The reason for that is because a turbocharger will hit a boost number regardless of the barometric pressure. Whereas a positive displacement is more or less, it's a screw in essence, and it can only deal with the amount of air that's out there. Turbos will keep making boost until the wastegate opens. So it's kind of a cheat code, really, with a turbocharger. And if you're running a big turbo, the big difference there is how that thing will load up on the dyno. It may take it longer to get to peak boost because the air just isn't there. But once it gets to peak boost, assuming that it does, and this is always based on altitude, If it gets to a boost high enough for it to crack wastegates, then you've made your boost number, and it'll make the same number over and over again within that percentage of heat and everything else that you're looking at. But yeah, the turbos are always going to be a cheat code, because turbos do what turbos do best, which is just simply make boost regardless of barometric pressure, which is why turbos are what are used in airplanes and piston-driven engines, if you can get away with it packaging-wise, because it extends your ceiling by so much. Whereas a supercharger, I mean, it'll compress whatever oxygen is available, but it has no way to keep compressing until it reaches any certain point. Turbo will do that until there's just not enough air to activate a wastegate for any given power number. So, you know, if you've got a turbo on a Lycoming engine and it's making, say, 400 horsepower, that 400 horsepower is there right up until the altitude that maximum manifold pressure can't be reached. And that's when you'll see that power start to drop. Anyway, like I say, turbos are a freaking cheat code. Smoking at 5 saying, I ran my diesel truck on a Taylor chassis dyno for big rigs. That's pretty cool. The run starts at max RPM and you floor it, and they keep increasing the load until it draws the RPM down to a low RPM. It's a reverse dyno run. That's pretty cool sounding. I'd like to see that. I've never seen one of those. Well, I've seen a video of a big rig on a diesel, but I've never actually seen them do it that way. But in a way it makes sense, because those things only turn to maybe, what, 2,000 RPM? So, pretty cool stuff. Smoking at 5 saying, talk about a load. Yeah. Richard Martin saying, what up, B? I pulled the trigger and decided to get Cook's long tube headers and catted mid pipes. Nice. SRT Auto Works ordered them last month on the 17th. They haven't arrived in the shop yet. Yeah, they might be a little bit behind because of the old COVID. You're going to love those things, though, and the fitment is second to none. Uncle Stinkford saying, I think the point you're trying to make is that track numbers trump dyno numbers every single time. Yes. Shawnee's saying, the Cooks are a great header. I had them on my 392. Yeah, they're an awesome header. Ferocious 1980 saying, yeah, can't go wrong with Cooks. I had them on my 392 and love them. With the Corsa muffler, you know that sounds good. Eric Taylor saying, only 69 and 70 Mach 1s had the shaker, were the R codes. My brother's Mach was a Q code, non-shaker car. I think the new one is fine without the shaker, and I agree with that 100%. HU37 saying, I think I can answer the Mach 1 issue. It was rumored that it was going to make 520 horsepower, not 480, as stated by Ford. When it comes to the fake hood scoop, who cares? Yeah. Well, you know, and that's the thing, 520 versus 480. I mean, are you kidding me? Like, okay, so how are they going to make a Coyote basically make the same horsepower as a Voodoo? I mean, it's down on displacement. Yeah, it's got the intake available to it, but I don't know, man. I just, 480 seems pretty darn strong, especially in a car that's going to be making more torque than that 5.2 did down low. So, yeah, I think I'll take the Mach 1, especially because I can get one with an automatic. Christian would say, what do you think Chevy needs to do to revive the Camaro brand? They need to revive the Camaro car. I mean, they need to make something that people want to buy, and unfortunately, they're just not getting there with it. Now, that's not to say that you can't mod them and have a fast car and have a nice car and have a reliable car, but you guys know where I'm going with this. It's the triangle. The problem is that Camaro is at the bottom of a triangle with Mustang on one side and Challenger on the other, being bookends of a driving experience. With Mustang, you get a completely different driving experience than you do with Challenger, which makes it so cool. You can literally have one of each in your garage and have just such a varied driving experience. Whereas the Camaro, it's not as torquey as the 392, the Challenger. And quite honestly, it's not making enough power for its displacement. That's another problem. 6.4 making 485 and the 6.2 making 455, that's a problem. So there's that. It's down on horsepower compared to the Mustang, but it's not up on torque on any of them really to speak of. I mean, yeah, it's maybe making more tip-in torque than the Mustang, but the reality is that the Mustang seems to do more with what it's got. Plus, and what I'm meaning by that is that the gear ratios in the Mustang are more aggressive. So the torque of the engine is squashed by the gear ratio, which, you know, is like what is it, a 309 in the Camaro, 315 in the Camaro, something like that. Anyway, you get 355s in the Mustang, and that kind of takes away the issue of, you know, torque at like literal twisting force at the rear wheels. And then you factor in the fact the Mustang's going to spin to 7,500 RPM. The Camaro is not. You know, these are things that hurt the Camaro. And again, you couple all of that, just a driving experience that doesn't trump the 392 or the Mustang in any area whatsoever. And then on top of that, it's just ergonomically not the best. A lot of the fact, aside from the fact that the Camaro gets kind of lost in the shuffle, at least it did early on, because it just looks like a generic car. Now you take the 1LE or the ZL1, and now you're really talking about a flashy looking, good looking car. But once you get into that level, you've kind of passed that, you know, affordable stage for a lot of these folks. And so anyway, I guess the point that I'm making is, what can they do to the Camaro? They're going to have to make another Camaro. They're going to have to be, you know, Camaro has always tried to be more Mustang than Mustang, and this is just a spot where they failed in a way. They just, you know, the bigger engine didn't translate into a bigger engine driving experience. And hey, let's be honest, this kid right here showed up to the party and pretty much took all the hose, because you've got all the torque, a bigger car, more of a muscle car stance. It had more of just this beefy, meaty, chunky feel that didn't really exist in the marketplace until 2008, and really didn't get its feet underneath it. You know, what I'm talking about here is running 11s, or having the capability of running 11 stock. First modern muscle car to do that, naturally aspirated, Mopar. But that's really where this comes from. And so 6th gen just did not do Camaro stuff. It just kind of fell flat. Now, granted, heads, cam, intake, exhaust, gear, spray, it's a 9-second car, right? But the issue here isn't mods. It's, how does it come from the factory? How does it make you feel when you buy it, when you drive it? All of that. And the Camaro just never resonated with the right crowd. And where the 392 powered cars resonate with old folks, young folks, a lot of girls like the 392, especially the Chargers. That's really where they hit their stride. And obviously the Coyote does Coyote things. You don't even have to explain that away. So they just never did it. So they just need to revamp that car. Smoking at 5 saying, I've heard you mention a few times you replaced the HP70 SRT. Yes, I did. I couldn't find what happened in your old videos. What went wrong? I went wrong. So what had happened was, and this all happened on one night. I just cannot believe this happened. I had done the burnout and staged the car, and I had my hand, I'm trying to remember exactly how this happened. I had my hand right by the shifter. Typically, I never have my hand near the shifter. Staged the car, and I was in the right-hand lane. I'm looking at the lights, launched the car, and it kind of spun a little bit. It launched and it spun. When it spun, it laid over. My hand bumped the shift handle, and it didn't bump it enough to bump it into neutral. It just kind of bumped it, and the car flashed over, started to go past into the rev limiter, and I took my hand off. When I took my hand off the shifter, it popped into what would have been drive. Now I don't have a 4,000 RPM neutral. I've got a full, 6,300 RPM flash and it crashed the transmission. So yeah, that was all me. And so that's yours truly, blowing up a transmission. Chris Harris saying, hey B, I got my cam installed and tuned on my 6.1 with a ported throttle body, exhaust, and it only made 392, and that just feels low to me. Well, not really. First of all, it depends on what kind of dyno it was on. The cam and all of that, that's going to depend on, I don't know what cam you got. But I think those things, depending on the dyno, I want to say that on our dyno, I'm going to go off of TTS's D100. If you've never seen the silver D100, that's the truck that I cried when that thing left. Anyway, I think that one made 340, 336 or 346 to the rear wheels. I'm trying to remember. We got done with that one. It made 376 to the rear wheels, and that's through a NAG 1. So, and that's long tubes, tune, ported throttle body, but it didn't have a cam. So, depending on the cam, that might be a decent enough number. Keep in mind, they're not going to make the peak power of a 6.4. Again, it depends on, you got a ported throttle body, but if you've got like an extrude honed 6.1 or something like that, it can help. But I mean, I think that's a pretty healthy number. I mean, anything right at 400 for what you've got, I think is going to be good. Hang on, just a second. GS1, thank you very much. Saying I have a 2019 Charger Scat Pack. What's the deal with Nitrous on a stock 392? Also, I've seen Vortec pushing their products for a stock 392. Any thoughts? Ooh, yeah, I got a lot of thoughts on that. First of all, so when you're talking about Nitrous on a stock 392, there's a few things to consider. One, 392s come with a pretty tight ring gap. That's one of the biggest issues with 392s, whether it's boost, nitrous, or whatever. I want to say that the ring gap is like 20 thousandths. It might be 19 thousandths. And it's fairly high up on the piston. That's awesome for naturally aspirated, but not good for boost. And it doesn't help you for high RPM stuff either. So because of that, I wouldn't recommend a bigger shot of, let's say, 100 1/4 shot, depending on your tune. But I wouldn't, and your fuel quality, I wouldn't recommend anything bigger than that. Even with a standalone, I just wouldn't go much higher than that. Not only for the sake of the engine, but for the sake of the transmission. I don't like nitrous that's not a progressive kit on the 392s because that real hard hit, your torque number is going to jump above 550, and really anything on a Mustang dyno above 530, you can get some pretty significant transmission slippage. Not initially, but it will start to wear those clutches down very quickly. So just know that coming into it. Now, as far as Vortec pushing their products for 392s, yeah, there's that. There's ProCharger, which is a known entity with these cars. I've driven stock cam versions of those, probably 20-ish. As far as cammed versions, probably maybe 7 or 8. They're all good. Centrifugal superchargers is they're all the same as far as I'm concerned. Just make sure you're running enough intercooler and enough fuel. Have a good fueling system. Most of the ones that I've seen, 550 to the rear wheels, they're a solid 100 1/4 horse gain. Maybe 135 horsepower to the rear wheels, give or take. And that's on a real safe tune. And that's about what you would expect at that boost level, like at the 7-ish pounds of boost. Again, I probably wouldn't go much above that. Some of it's transmission at that point, but a lot of it is just that ring gap, plus fuel quality issues. something that you can't really adjust for, or rather account for, unless you're just really throwing fuel at it on a wholesale level. And even that, it's not the fuel amount, it's the fuel quality, right? So again, keeping the boost fairly low, keep it around 550-ish to the rear wheels, you'll be just fine with the boost. If you're asking which way would I personally go, boost it. That's what I would do, because it's going to be softer on the transmission. So go with that, right? But just know, bad fuel quality, tight ring gap, not good. And I don't recommend hot lapping it at all. I mean, you can hit it, don't get me wrong, you can play with it, but I wouldn't go back to back to back to back full hits. Just saying. Let her cool off a little bit. Let's see. Scroll back here, but thank you very much for the contribution, man. I appreciate it. Let's see. Man, got a lot of y'all checking in. Let's see. Let's see. All right, getting back to it, guys. Smoking 05. Hopefully that answers your question. HU37 cars back in the day weren't as good as you might think. Yeah, no, back in the day they sucked. Chris McVeigh saying, I heard the Supra has a chance of getting a manual transmission. With that and the new Nissan Z, I'm hoping to see a new JDM resurgence. Man, me and you both. I love me some, any of the Japanese stuff. I've always loved them. Always had a soft spot in my heart for any of the Datsuns. I had a buddy of mine that had a Corona that would have been just a riot with about a 75 shot of nitrous. If you don't know what a Corona is, it's this little boxy thing that's a rear-wheel drive 4-cylinder. Anyway. Cal is saying, once they come out with the CUDA, will it hurt the sale of the Challenger lineup? They may not even have a Challenger when that thing gets released. Michelle's checking in saying, I'm a girl and I own a 2018 TA64 and a 2016 Hellcat. Very nice. Shawnee's saying, Catalyst 99, a good problem to have if that happens. Yeah, that's true. Shawnee is already proposing marriage to Michelle. Shawnee is not one to let any grass grow underneath his feet. He's saying he loves the white gauges on the TA. Now he's just trying to make small talk. Very cute, Sean. I like it. A little bit of a love connection here trying to happen. Just try not to red light. Mike Horton saying, how to get 1,000 horsepower. Have fully forged 6.1 cam with built Hellcat trans and clutch rated up to 1,200 horsepower. Pro Charger, D1SE, triple pump fuel system, E85. What else do I need? Nitrous, specific tune. Well, you're going to need a cam that's going to help you get to that place. Something in the probably 236 on the intake side. I know that's a lot for the Hemis, but you're going to want to be filling those cylinders as hard as you can. So a little bit of nitrous certainly won't hurt though. And keep in mind, there's a lot of guys, and don't get me wrong, I mean, I'm not saying that it, is the same thing, but a lot of Hellcats running around that are making 1,000 horsepower. I mean, it's easy to do with these engines at that displacement. 6.1, 6.2, it's all the same. You fill it with enough boost, you'll be fine. And, extrude hone intake with, an aggressive cam won't be a problem at all. You can do that with a Whipple. You can do that with I'd probably go F1 with a separate belt, and I think you'd be well on your way to getting there, that's for sure. Let's see. Concha's saying, do you think the 6.2 Hellcat motor is played out or overused? Should Dodge create a new performance engine? The problem is, Concha, the Hellcat platform is incredibly durable for what it is, and that's the reason why they put it in literally everything. So when you're talking about, is it played out? Not really. I mean, that's like saying that the 350 Chevy was played out, and or the LS now would be played out, even though there's so many different LSs, I can't keep up with them all. But the aftermarket loves them. Anyway, Yeah, look, I wouldn't really worry about calling the Hellcat played out. It keeps making power, and in fact, it's, if anything, going to be one of the last engines to be let go. It just keeps proving itself over and over and over again to be not only durable, but I mean, you can knock down great economy with it, makes great power, does everything very well. The downside to it, though, that paper son, that's the big issue, is the cost. The money that's involved with these things to buy them outright is unimaginably high. So, for me, you know, from a performance standpoint, it's way overpriced for what it is. So, it's one of those questions of, you know, would I buy another Hellcat powered vehicle? I don't know. I mean, isn't that really the question? I mean, they're putting that engine in everything. The TRX, the Durango, isn't it weird how the TRX went on that reveal thing? Anyway, TRX, Durango, the Jeep, the Challenger, the Charger, and then you got the red eye variants of, you know, thereof. No, I don't know if I would. I mean, again, it's a great engine, great platform, but it just, God, it's the prospect of expense. But for what you are buying, you got to think that the Hellcat comes with the HP90, and that drivetrain in and of itself, again, has proven itself over and over and over again to hit way outside of its weight class. More so than the red eye, by the way. So I would buy a Hellcat before I would buy a red eye. And if and when the Hellcat platform is discontinued, it will be a very sad day nonetheless. Riff checking in saying, hey y'all. HU37 saying, do you think that a manual Hellcat would be more fun to drive if it had the 297 first gear versus the 226? I'll say this, not necessarily, because it gets a little bit squirrely. The problem, though, is that it's kind of laggy in first gear. It's just doggy. It just doesn't have that snap. You know, instead of a 226 versus a 297, why not throw a 262 in there, something like that for a first gear? Just something to liven it up a little bit so you're not riding the hell out of the clutch to get it moving. These things are heavy. They need a little bit of help. Johnny's checking in with Riff. Let's see. Oh, looks like Rift had a bunch of recalls taken care of on his car. Nice. You can see Rift and Sean are hanging out here. Mike's asking, am I on any social media? Can I follow you? Yeah, Instagram is the only one that I do. It's BA Mason 721. And I'm on there sporadically. I'm not, you know, you'll see some pretty random shit pop up on there. Really is saying thanks, bro. He's saying they also reflashed the PCM and ended up with the same problem a lot of people have, where it makes a really strange sound when I turn it off now. Interesting. Alex is asking, do you think that a new wedge V8 design with VVT would be desirable or workable in the modern era? Yeah. As a matter of fact, look how well the LS is doing. It's hard to deny results. Yeah, a wedge engine is more. So here's the thing. When you're talking about a Pentastar design Hemi, all right, and this also, by nature, a 4-valve engine is a Hemi or a Pentastar design. Shotgun head, if you will. But wedge engines are more thermodynamically efficient than a Hemi, whereas a Hemi is much more volumetrically efficient. Now you get into the older engines with domed pistons and things like that, and cylinder evacuation not being as good. That's really where the wedge comes into play. But a wedge with very good flowing heads will outperform a Hemi only in that power range where they're designed to be run in. Typically, that's where that comes into play. And that the reason for that, again, is that the wedge is just more thermodynamically efficient. Combustion chambers, flame front speed, cylinder fill at max pressure happens quicker. There's just some things that work better in that respect. It's one of the reasons why the Hemis have 2 spark plugs, to help to make up for some of that inefficiency. So to that point, yes, a set of heads that flows 340, 320 CFM in a wedge configuration with a cylinder, with an intake manifold that would allow for good cylinder fill with, good velocity, a la LS, LT. That would be the way to go. The problem with that, though, is that I guess my first question is, what kind of power target would we be looking at? What kind of displacement would we be looking at? If it is so far of a departure from where we are now, I don't know that I would want to go that route, even if it is technically better, because you lose some of the brand identity. You have to remember that so much of the brand identity revolves around that Hemi name, and without that Hemi name, the brand loses almost all of its bite, certainly all of its nostalgic throwback charm, no doubt. So because of that, would I like to see one? I mean, yeah, sorta, yeah. Something like a 380 cubic inch wedge motor with a killer intake manifold and a little bit more aggressive cam profile to take advantage of some of the thermodynamic efficiencies that you pick up with the wedge motor. I mean, it would just be awesome. You're looking at a 500 horsepower engine on accident, or a revised intake on the Hemi and a little bit different gearing and a little bit different camshaft profile, and have it make about 530, 540 horse. There's ways to get to it, but I like the idea. I like the prospect of a wedge, but I don't like what it does to the brand from an identity standpoint. Let's see. Bear with me just a second, y'all. Oh, GS1, thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. Saying I haven't done anything yet, just like to ponder and plan before ever pulling the trigger. Sounds like I need to get a Hellcat, kind of like you did. Look, I'm never going to talk anybody out of modding their car. It's a lifestyle that we all live. It's something that we all enjoy. Some of us take different approaches to it. The Hellcat is, to your point, GS, that the Hellcat is extremely difficult to beat in every aspect of playing around with these cars. And look, every car has its place. Hellcats do great on the street. They do great on the drag strip. They're not a roll racer. Really, they're a little bit, they're about as aerodynamic as a barn door, but they certainly have their place, and they will, for the foreseeable future, will be the yardstick that anybody measures their vehicle against. Is it faster than a Hellcat? If it is, then it hauls ass. I mean, that's, just for the casual observer, they know what a Hellcat is. So yeah, man, this thing's faster than a Hellcat. Oh, damn, that thing must really haul ass. Or it's almost as fast as a Hellcat. Oh, damn, that thing, it's fast. That's where the Hellcat charm really comes into play. Because to be the man, all together now, you gotta beat the man. And if you can't, or you won't, this pretty much is the gatekeeper. It answers all the questions before they're even asked. So yeah, for that amount of money, I would say you might want to go ahead and save it up and buy one of these things. But thank you very much for the contribution, brother. I appreciate it. Let's see. Oh, they're Sean and Rift are hanging out. Let's see. Oh, he's saying he's talking to something about the catalytic converters. Interesting. Let's see. Oh, we're saying they also had to reflash the PCM, same issues. Let's see, I gotta get back to where I can find you guys. Mike Horn, I do not do the email thing. Alex is asking, do I think the Dodge will ever introduce a hybrid direct injection setup like Ford and Toyota and make it work with MDS? It's coming, I think, but I think that I would probably say that. So direct injection with an inline 6 turbo would be freaking awesome. That would be like, you couldn't ask for better. But I would want to see a dual fuel system on that. I'd still want to see some type of a port injection, mainly because it keeps the intake valves clean, especially under partial throttle cruise and unboosted transitions. But yeah, I'm pretty sure you're going to start seeing that stuff fairly sooner than later. But again, you're probably looking at 2023, 2025. But see, the problem is and make it work with MDS. That's the tough part of that, because anytime you're messing with that level of technology and you're messing with it on the level of the fuel quality that we have, again, you're looking at intake valves here. That's when you have to have some level of port injection to keep the valves clean. That's already been proven at this point. I mean, everybody that's tried it, except for maybe BMW, has gone back to some port injection. But hybrid and all that, yeah, you'll be seeing that eventually. Even full electric, which I like. Kurt Tank saying, smartest I ever did was 1:7 ratio roller rocker arms. Those worked well. Who was it that was making those? It was shaft mounted system. Anyway, the stock ones on the Hemis are 165, by the way. Trivia. Shawnee saying, good night, B. Good night, everybody. Good info. I'll see you in a few days midweek. Awesome. Take care, everybody. Appreciate you, brother. Scat Speed saying, what up, B. Mason? Got the arm flex. I like it. Thank you again, GS1. I appreciate you, brother. So's checking in saying, what's the specs on the Joker Cam? Those are proprietary. Mopar fam checking in. Yo, what up, Mopar fam? Say, got a question. What custom PCMs can I use for a 2020 Chrysler 300S V8? What custom PCMs? Not sure if Megasquirt has anything for you. I would just say stick with the PCM that you have it unlocked. There's a lot that you can do with that stock computer. But that's the route that I would go. Depends on what you're trying to do with it. Is there a reason why you need something that is outside of the range of what you're working with? Because that computer can handle turbos, nitros, pretty much anything. Mopar fam's checking in saying, and can I do Brembo brake conversion on a non-Brembo equipped car? Yes, you can. You'll need all of the parts. You may even need, you'll need the spindles, you'll need the rotors, you'll need the calipers, you'll need the brake lines, but yes, you can do that. Rip is saying, I feel like ProCharger is a bit better than Vortec because of the air-to-air intercooler, at least from my experience with my cars. Yeah, I mean, ProCharger's kind of got this Hemi game figured out. So, and I know that, they're just the D1 with the race intercooler. I mean, it's kind of a known entity. So that's where I would go. Ben Waiting's checking in, got the 2 thumbs up and the arm flex. I like it. Thank you, sir. Mopar fame say they need a Hellcat powered Chrysler 300. Yeah, they've needed that, but hell, we can't even get the 6.4 here in the States. So, and it looks good too. The SRT 300, check that out. They sell them in Australia, and they're a damn good looking car. UAE can get them too. Mopar fam said, surprised nobody put a elephant at 300 too. I'm sure given a long enough timeline, somebody will. Rift is saying he was just talking about they swapped out the recalls was changing out the catalytic converters and the piping to the middle of the car, but they put it way too low. That's weird that it would be lower hanging because it's all pretty much, I mean, it's all uniform underneath there, so I don't know how that would happen. Yeah, I would take it back. You know, that thing doesn't need to be hanging that low. 3 inches lower. I mean, mine, mine's kind of tucked up in there, so I don't think that would be a thing. Doc Div's checking in and saying, what up, B? What up, Doc? Just one saying his main influence for not doing stupid things on my hot rods is Jay at Real Street Performance here in Central Florida. Used to have an 04 Cobra. Love 04 Cobras. Juan's checking in and saying, Mason, my man, what is that automatic had the MDS and manuals did not? That is, why is it? It is for fuel economy. And that would be a major pain in the ass for a manual transmission. Whereas so with an automatic, you've got kind of an inherent dampener with that torque converter. If you had a manual transmission and it went into MDS mode, it would probably be too violent. From a NVH, the noise, vibration, and harshness standpoint, it would probably not work out real well. And so MDS being a problem, potentially wearing out cams and lifters back in the day, and shut down cylinder is a dead hole. So what it is basically just it's like an air pillow bouncing around in there. It's not that big of a deal. The issue was on some of the MDS lifters, they would fail because it was an oiling issue. And a lot of it had to do with how long the vehicle was sitting idling. So trucks at a plant, cop cars, things like that, they had issues with that. So they've since fixed a lot of that, but I would say that they fixed it. I mean, we in our fleet of trucks, I mean, we've got some of these Hemis that have got well over 200,000 miles. 250, 270,000 miles is not uncommon, and we don't really start getting rid of them until about 350. So most of the 2017s, let me think about this. Most of the 2017s that we have, I want to say, are in like the 180, 190,000 mile range right now. BB78 saying Hellcat is America's 2JZ. In some ways, I would agree with that. Absolutely. Rip is saying, I'm thinking about getting a 2013 GT500 by trading in the 09 SRT8. That way I would have a Hellcat for drag racing and something for track. Yeah, I mean, I could see that. The only downside is the GT500 is not the best closed course car. I mean, when it comes to weight balance, weight transfer, and all of that, it's really basically the same as a Hellcat. Maybe a little bit easier to get around, a little bit lighter, but the reality is that in terms of, geometry and everything else, to get that thing around, there are definitely others out there that are better, but, and I mean this with all sincerity, I am shocked that I never bought a GT500. I just kind of never got around to it. Some of my most fond memories, some of the funnest memories I have, though, are playing around with GT500. So if you're looking for something to play around with on the street that's just dumb fun, GT500. Mopar fam say, I want to supercharge that 345. Hell yeah, I would. Doc Diff is checking out, saying Hetso Paradise. Yep. Joker Cam is only available through Doc Differential. Dylan Pop is asking, what would be the best compression for boost and why? Depends on your fuel, my friend. The best compression is the highest possible compression you can get and run effectively with the fuel that you're running. Think diesel in this. So I'm assuming you're talking about gas, one of these Hemis. If you're doing a build, yeah, I like 10 to 1. 10 to 1's pretty common, and if you're going to be going E85, that's the route that you want to go. Hellcats are only at 9.5 to 1, but it's a positive displacement supercharger. And that 9.5 to 1 helps to quell a lot of the low-speed spark knock, which is what kind of kills engines. In fact, it's a low-speed spark knock that's known for killing more Hellcats than anything else. So, you know, data log it, watch those, watch that knock sensor voltage, but in reality, it's not a big deal. But again, it just depends on what you're going to be putting together. How much ring gap do you have? How much work are you going to do to the engine before you start to throw this boost at it? Because, you know, if it's me, I'm going to say 11 to 1, open up ring gap to about 30 thousandths, 29 thousandths on the compression ring and on the second ring, and let it eat. You know, at that point, throw some E85 at it, fuel system as long as it covers it, you know, and hit it with about 16 pounds of boost, 18 pounds of boost, and, you know, you're off to the races at that point. And there's plenty of guys that run that exact combination. So, you know, you're with even a mildly aggressive cam for a, you know, boosted application like this, you're looking at, you know, 1100 horsepower. So, you know, just know that coming into it. The question that, to answer the question, you have to unpack so much just to get to the bottom line. But all that being said, and obviously, you know, you're asking about compression on boost. Fuel quality is going to be the thing that determines your compression ratio and the amount of boost that you can run. It's just how it works. Compression ratio will determine how responsive the vehicle will be out of boost or transitioning into boost, like at launch. Tip-in throttle response. Obviously, with a, you know, positive displacement supercharger, it's right now. But if you're just kind of cruising around, that snap of the throttle, that yip, you know, that just, you know, that instant hit, you get there better, get there faster, get there more convincingly with a higher compression ratio. But again, you can do that kind of thing if you're running E85, race gas, you know, any type of a fuel like that. You can, you know, ignite anything. You get the idea. If you're playing around with pump gas, you've got to remember that now you have an inconsistent type of fuel. So you have to have you basically have to pander to the lowest common denominator at this point and bring that compression ratio down so that it plays nice with other fuel types, or fuel qualities, I should say. Again, in that respect, for a street engine, I want to see 10 to 1, but 9.5 is a happy medium. And at 9.5, you get still enough compression to make it a little bit snappy, and you get enough cushion to where when you throw the, you know, throw the boost at it, you're really not taxing fuel quality with these cars, you know, boost levels, you know, around say 8 to 12-ish PSI. So hopefully that answers your question. GS1 saying, how should I know if I have the lifter tick? Been used to the 17 Mustang Coyote engine before this car. You'll know it because there's two different Hemi ticks. The first one, you light off the vehicle and it'll go tick, 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 and the tick goes away. That's a loose manifold, maybe missing a bolt or something like that. That's just a regular Hemi tick. That's not I mean, it's normal for them to do that, but it's not acceptable for them to do that. Now, the other Hemi tick is one that's a little bit, well, it's not the one you want. You don't want either one of them, but this is the worst one. If you fire the vehicle up and it tick, 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 and it never goes away, and if it only goes away at that point when you apply a little bit of throttle, and it goes away, and then you release the throttle and it comes back. When I say a little bit, I mean just like, you know, free rev it to, you know, 2,000 RPM. Just kind of slowly get into it and then slowly get out of it. When you get out of it, if it still ticks, that is a lifter going bad or has already gone bad. If you get a chirp out of it, and you will know the difference because it'll be a tick 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 like metal on metal, or a chirp like something sliding. That's when you know things have gone from bad to worse. And or if it's a very, very loud tick, that's when the lifter is basically let go, and you've got about 3 seconds before you filled your oil pan with miscellaneous bits of metal. So one of them's pretty benign, one of them's not. Chances are it's not. Let's see. Oh, Ned's checking in saying order his 2020 Scat Pack Challenger, 6-speed shaker dynamic. Ooh, that's a fun car. Dynamics package 2 weeks ago. Expect it in 6 weeks. Very nice. You're gonna like it. GS1 likes it too. Mopar fam saying, is the Scat Pack stage 1, 2, and 3 packages worth it for the 5.7 Hemi vehicles? They're a little outdated. Arrington is the company that put those together initially, if memory serves me correctly, back when Arrington was just Arrington. And they did fairly well. The computer's already been cracked and the whole bit. They're good. They're emissions legal. They, all of that. Again, the camshafts are a little bit older design. I think you can do better than that, but all things considered, I think it's kind of a neat package. Only in that it is a Mopar-derived package. At least you still get a warranty if you get it installed from your Mopar dealer. But there's no Scat package for $392, so I'm a little bit jealous about that. Saying I'm installing my unlocked PCM right now with a Trinity 2 tuner along with it, but I can't get the check engine light to go off. Okay, so if you can't get the check engine light to go off, you need to pull the codes and find out why there's a check engine light. It may come back as a 1405 code. Yeah, you may, this is where it sucks because now you're going to have to start turning off things in the tune, and the only thing is that your tuner will have to do that. So, unless you've got HP Tuner software or Diablo software. But that's where that's going to be kind of a pain in the ass. A lot of times that's going to be, you may be able to, depending on the code, 3 key on engine on, key off cycles can make some of those go away, but it's just going to depend on the code. Alex is saying, Mopar, only if you care about maintaining your factory warranty, otherwise, no. Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying. So, Paradise saying, I'll give you a call sometime next month. I'm getting my exhaust done this month. I heard a lot of good things about the Joker. It is a kick-ass cam. I think you're going to like it a lot. And Doc Diff can get you some sound clips and all that of that cam, too. I think you're going to like it. Let's see. Mopar fan saying he wants to get a 05 to 10 Chrysler 300 with a 5.7 as his first car and daily. What kind of mods would you recommend me to look into that would be daily friendly but can wake up to 345? Oh man, not a ton. I mean, obviously exhaust mods will help, but get those manifolds off and get you some headers on there for sure. But again, it's just going to depend on where your budget falls. But a tune will always liven them up, and you don't have to get those computers unlocked to tune them. So that's where I would start. HU317, the only problem using the 2013 GT500 as a track car is it has a live axle. The funny thing is that I've known guys that have tracked them. It's just also there's a heat issue with those cars too. So they do heat up quite a bit in that environment. So just know that coming into it. Let's see. Not a good gamer. Like that one too. Saying on a 5.7, how much of a limiting factor is the stock crankshaft? Just doing drop-in pistons, rods. How's good for how much horsepower? Man, look, there's been guys make a bunch of power with stock crankshafts. Doc Diff is one of them. I think he's somewhere around 850 with his truck on a stock crank. So obviously, he's good at tuning those combinations too. And the tune is a major factor as far as, how well they'll hold together. But the reality is that they're actually pretty stout cranks. Mike's Chicken is saying catching in late, long hours these days. Yeah. Rift is asking, how do you tell the difference between Hemi tick and injectors ticking? Injectors are not as loud as the Hemi tick. Hemi tick is tick, 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 and the injectors are just, it sounds like a sewing machine. Ned saying, thanks. If there had been any 6-speed scat packs within 100 miles, he'd have bought it, but after a month of searching to order the one that I want. In Frostbite, awesome color, man. Congrats on that one. Rip saying, let's help the YouTube algorithm. Let's give him some thumbs up. Yeah, thumbs up, guys. Thank y'all. No, and HU37, yeah, you are correct. He's talking to Rift about that. Also, too, Hellcats don't fall under that category for the issues with the lifters either. Let's see. What am I missing here? Mopar Fams is saying, you can listen if you like. I just want to know what I can do to it to build my way up from there. Yeah, I'll just say tune and get started from there. Saying, is the Hemi tick really just loose exhaust manifolds? The primary ones is. Yeah. Yeah, the primary issue with the Hemi tick is just exhaust manifolds, but if it's a lifter, you'll know it. But the earlier Hemis, you don't have to worry about that too much. The issue you have to worry about with those engines is heating or potentially overheating and them dropping valve seats. Yeah, that's more to the issue with those things. Let's see. Just one saying, if I do nitrous, I assume I need a PCM and a tuner. I would say yes, you do need, and I mean need, not want, but need a PCM and a tuner. Some will argue with me on that. That's fine. You know, their car, their rules, but for me, no, you would have to have a tune for that modification. Just one saying, so about 2,500 to 3,500 with all in on the newer cars, yeah. Close to it. Maybe not quite that much. Mopar fam saying 03 to 08 Hemis do that? Oh geez, yeah. Well, not all of them. Again, you know, it doesn't, you know, a small percentage may do it, but a small percentage of a very large number is a very large number. Not a good gamer saying, thanks for the crankshaft info. Considering doing it, it's cams and drop-ins over the winter to get ready for boost. Yeah, no, you should be in good shape. But guys, we are coming up on right at 2.5 hours. And GS1 saying, I don't play with the safety of my engine, no doubt. And Kevin's asking, with the E4 supercharger, would you keep the stock cam? Yep, I would keep the stock cam. Because that E-Force is a lot of fun with the stock cam. Oh, Riff, yeah, throw that up and then pop me with the link to that video. I want to see that. And y'all have seen underneath my car quite a bit. It's tucked up there pretty good. But guys, we're coming up on an hour and a half. I'm sorry, an hour and a half. You're right. 2.5 hours. I want to thank everybody for hanging out with me tonight. Hope you guys are having a great weekend. Stay safe out there. Mopar fam's asking, what kind of supercharger is better for the Hemi? Depends on what your application is going to be. I like the E-Force and the Pro Charger. But you guys have a great one, man. I really appreciate y'all hanging out with me. Stay safe out there, and you know, keep washing your hands and wearing your masks and wearing your you know hazmat suits and everything else. But take it easy out there. God bless, and we'll catch you on the next one. Adios.